Welcome, everyone. This is a GSUS Wednesday special political yap session, a little discussion session for us to work out the muscles of the brains, get our little gears turning to have a critical lens about our shared material condition. So, I am Jaden. I help organize with GSUS Bay Area. I'm on some personal endeavors right now, if you could see. I've made some stuff. I help with the zines and such. But right here, right now, we're here to discuss politics, but more so where politics comes from, right? These discussions are centered around a philosophical understanding, because that's where politics come from. A politic, to me, and is what I've been observing, is no more than just an outward projection and a materialization of an individual's philosophy. So, to begin our session, I did post the agenda in the chat. First bullet point with his following bullet points: owning the means of production, some tool, labor, resources, and understanding that life is learning. So let us begin. So the owning the means of production is a very important thing to want us to understand, not just in economic theory, right? You talk about economic theory, Karl Marx, owning the means of production, right? The proletariat, our labor and such. It's all economic, all theory. But owning the means of production is so much more. Owning the means of production is allowing me to do this. I own the means to produce a headband, cool, but it also requires my labor, but more so the tools, right? I would not have been able to embroider this all fancy, nice, and whatnot with my hands. Machines and its consistency and its ability to do so has allowed me to create such a design with the headband, of course. But owning the means of production is simply just allowing, right, being allowed to make and do stuff. So the owning the means of production, like I go to automotive a lot. I'm a mechanic, so that's where my wheelhouse is, my forte. But when it comes to owning the means of production, I own the means to produce a repair with the tools I have as a mechanic, right? So jack up a car, give me a problem, I'll change your brakes, we'll flush your coolant system or whatnot and whatever. Owning the means of production just basically means having the tools, your labor, your expertise and resources to produce something. It doesn't have to be, a big grand factory. Owning the means of production doesn't have to be owning an immense amount of capital. Owning the means of production basically just means that you have the means to produce something. So whether it be you have a sewing machine, whether it be you have, let's say, crocheting tools, maybe you like to fish, you have the means to produce. I can't fish right now. I don't have a fishing pole, the rod, the string, the leer, all of the the little accessories that come with fishing. I don't have any of that. I know my dad does. He has the means to produce fishing. But you get in this mindset of the means of producing and how to produce stuff. Owning the means of production just means much more than economic theory. It means having a way of life, right? And that is what you are owning, a means and way of life. And so if I were a sewer, like a sewer or someone, a lumberjack and his axe, that is how you identify the individual lumberjack, not just from his expertise and his labor of wielding that axe, but the axe itself, right? That's how you know that. And of course, the getup, all the accessories and the clothing of whatnot that goes into being a lumberjack. But owning the means of production, the lumberjack owns the means, the axes and the tools and whatnot, but also the labor, the resources, the physicality of what it means to be a lumberjack. Owning the means of production is a becoming process, right? So you need the tools, right? As a mechanic or as a sewer, your needles, right? Your jack stand, wrenches, and whatnot. You have to have your tools, your labor as well, which is crafted through your, I would say, a training process or just a development process that makes you, I would say, closer, more present with the tools, right? Because you had someone, let's say a novice, a wrench or a ratchet with a socket on it, and tell them to go fix a car. Well, now the individual may find some roadblocks and whatnot, may not find themselves in a comfortable spot to perform and use the tool as such as desired and intended. You hand the mechanic a tool or whatever, a wrench and a socket, they will be more proficient at it. So, whether it doesn't have to be a mechanic with a wrench and a socket, it could be a seamstress with her, sewing needles. It could be a boxer with his gloves, right? So you always have the individual with the tool, which makes their existence as, owning the means of production. So it's not simply just enough to literally own and have a factory. If the individual does not know how that factory functions and works and all the material machine processes inside of it, they simply just own it without any forward thought about it. And we're getting to the forward thought and throne thought about that. But owning the means of production as that second bullet point is a learning process, because life is about learning. Life is not just about owning the means of production. It's about learning, right? So as you go out through your journey of life, right, you come and go with some things may stay. But what doesn't go entirely is that owning of the means of production, because you always keep a little bit of whatever you learn with you, right? I don't skate anymore. I used to be a skater boy, haha. But I don't skate anymore, but I still have that little bit of, if I were to pick it up again, I could probably get back into it. But owning the means of production, I'm just saying it a lot, but owning this is the means of your life and living. And we'll get into this more economic theory. Capitalism has privatized such means of owning the production. So you don't entirely own it. Most times in this credit economy or in this finance economy, as people, it's finance monopoly, you don't really own anything, right? Another entity which allows you to own based off of the rent or lease, that is what you are owning. You're owning the temporary, of the fact. You're not owning the entirety of the fact. So when you make something like this, I can call this 100% mine. I made this. He hath mixed his labor with. This is my headband. I made this. Now, if I go to go and buy something, this is where you get into liberal ideology, liberal mode of thought. This, I would say libertarian, but this, the capitalist society, where the buying and purchasing and that transaction makes ownership absolute. At least in theory, right? In theory, in a liberal society or in this, free society, when you buy something, it becomes an absolute change of ownership. So let's say you go to a Walmart, you go to a Target, Home Depot or whatnot, and you go get something off the shelf, bring it to the checkout. The moment you pay for that item and that transaction, it no longer becomes the store as a private property, becomes yours as a personal property in which you are ever, whatever you want to do with that object or whatever, if for its intended purpose or use or whatnot. But going from private property to personal property, right? You are owning maybe not the means of production, but you are owning another object which becomes yours. Because during, its time as private property, it was sitting on a shelf waiting for that transaction in sale because someone has materialized that product, that value for its, intended consumption. And the consumption doesn't have to be food, right? I go buy scissors, I'm technically consuming because I am using, right? This transaction is a giving process. They are giving to me through a contract, of course, through this transaction, but it is a giving process, and I'm being given, and I take and consume that scissors is now mine when I buy it. And that buying of that labor, the money indicates that, exchange of labor, or, all of that, the accumulations and finalizations of that labor. So the entirety of that scissor, whether it costs $25, $30 for like a good pair, $50 for what, those scissors, right? All of that money amounts into the, processes, the resources, the labors, and the tools at which made that scissor. So the owners of production, right, can make and produce that scissor. In capitalism, it's privatized, right? You can't just go out and ask a company, hey, make a scissor for me, right, in the ways that I want it. You'll have private enterprises to do that, your custom work, but they require a bunch of this, very expensive, because individual labors is that what you're, paying for, and of course the resources and whatnot. But owning the means of production means that you're allowed to do so, just paying the, parts. You're just paying the parts, or you're just paying the, not the labor, because you do the labor yourself, owning the means of production. When I repair a car, I don't take much. I don't have shop overhead. I don't have bills to pay. All of my tools are paid for. All you're just paying is for my time and labor. So I don't charge much to charge a car, right? So, but that goes with owning the means of production. And, it also goes into the saying, I don't work for a profit. I think it's very silly to work for a, profit in this day and age. It kind of outs you out as something that you don't want to be. But owning the means of production is very important. And we have to understand the owning means of production in these two terms, which is our next bullet point: throw and forward. When I literally throw out the phrase owning the means of production, it elicits a lot of, thoughts, maybe some reactions, maybe some understandings about you have with the term phrase owning the means of production. To throw. This thrown understanding at which you are, presented with is how you understand, or how each individual understands this term, right? And it is the culmination, the accumulation of all of the experiences you've had with this term, if you ever had any experience with this term. Owning the means of production. It doesn't have to be, the means of production. It could be, socialism as an idea. It could be capitalism, imperialism. It could be, intersectionality. The terms are thrown at you. When you hear the word, they are thrown. The term forward investigates further the meaning of the term being presented. So I'll throw the term owning the means of production, and then a little bit in that previous section, I forwarded the understanding of what it means to own the means of production. So throw and forward go with this back and forth of this. They both must exist because one cannot exist without the other. You cannot have a thrown understanding, complete in all of its processes of becoming, like the term owning the means of production, and not have a further understanding of it. I call this the matter of fact as fact. When you take something thrown at you as the matter of fact and then take it as fact, watch out. It's very dangerous to go into this understanding that what you are seeing is fact. And this is the basis of propaganda, really. Taking the matter of fact as fact. Taking that I see, I am presented, and I am given, and it is that. That is correct. I'm going to go the rest of my life believing this information as part of the fact, right? So throwing forward, dance around this idea, dance with this idea of the matter of fact is fact. Throw, matter of fact is fact. But forward, it's not just because it is here is the reason why it's here. There is a process at which became this idea, to which we investigate and discover, that second bullet point, to the understandings of this object. So we can do this with any idea. We'll do this with owning the means of production as a quick example. So throwing forward, when it comes to owning the means of production, I throw this idea at you. You may have your predispositions, your understandings of this term already. Means of production, I throw it at you. We forward it, right? Actually having within your hand the tools to commit to a, to a process. Sorry, I keep going back to mechanics, but I can, with the wrench, I'll fix a car. With the seamstress, they can fix clothes. They can repair clothes. I'll come up with other examples and just in the same too. But that is in essence, forwarding understanding, questioning. Thank you, Day. We must question what we have been thrown into. And life itself is a process at which we are thrown into. So this is more of a philosophy right here. But when you are born into life, when you are, I would say, thrown into life, you are not given any explanation as to why you exist. You are not given any consent to exist. And you are not given any other platform of which you can provide yourself on besides the matter of fact, besides of the conditions at which you are existing in. So being thrown, right, you are in this world doing whatever, doing what you have been told to do, and then you just live and do, right? All of your actions, even though they come from the individual self, right, are crafted by other people's actions, right? This wall right here, someone's action that they committed in this world. Someone built this wall. I didn't build this wall. Someone else did. And a team of builders, the construction crew, built this wall, right? The whole building, in fact, right? So we have to understand that objects exist in this constant state of becoming. Someone made this hair clip, not me, but someone did with their time and their labor. Maybe a machine mold press, but this could have been, made by hand or machine. I know for a fact this phone was in some parts made by hand, in which the materials mined and the ore extracted from the earth were also by machine, or at least, by hand, or by at least machine excavator and whatnot, jackhammers. This earphones case, this mouse, the laptop that I'm, doing this on, all have been made, labored, whether it be by machine or by hand. But there is a process at which forwarded that helps us understand why it's here in the material now, as opposed to, where it was before. Because this was not always in my possession. In the common run of the case in our modern society, this was considered private property at one point. Now it is personal property. It's mine. Mine, don't touch it. Because of that transaction and sale, the absolute change of ownership through that, monetary, give and take situation. So the throw and the forward of the, in this matter of fact, will helps us understand that things aren't just the way they are, just the way they are. I'll say Trump bad and I'll get 100 thumbs up. Whoo, Trump bad. But why? I'm not saying that, there's any doubt to be give that he is bad. Sure. But we must investigate why, to forward our understanding so that we can come out and say he is bad because of what? There is a reasoning. And I like to have this reasoning as a material, right? As a material science, as a material understanding. We're not just pulling stuff out our ass. He's evil because he's bad. He's bad. He's gonna die to death. That's a good thing, It's just, having this thrown understanding of the world is very, it's natural. But, we can do a lot better when it comes to understanding our shared conditions. Our forward understanding is this process of investigation and discovery, and discovering the being of the why it is the matter of fact, right? Why is it fact? Why is it here? Sky is blue. Why? Right? The sun yellow. Why? Only to on Earth, because if you go out, outside in space, it's all white. Right? There's no molecules in the air, no stuff between. There's no medium for the light to travel through to bounce off to create the light. It just goes in a straight line, and there's nothing to refract any of the light in space. That's why it appears as white, outside of Earth. But here on Earth, where we have an atmosphere and a medium, and all these molecules in the air and the oxygen that we breathe and the nitrogen in the air, you have all of these, points for light to refract off of. One of those shades, one of those, refractions gives you the blue sky, right? Pretty cool science fact. But that is, our understanding, our forward understanding of the world, right? Now, sky blue, now we know why. Sun yellow, now we know why. But you go into these deeper processes, so it's not just as simple as grass green, ocean blue, right? You get into these more critical and more intimate discussions of what I like to get into. It's philosophical understanding. It is a political and a material understanding of the world, right? Bridging uh, philosophy with politics is, my little wheelhouse. I love talking about the bridges between those. But, this throw and forward can be applied to anything. And as we've shown with the clip right here, this clip, you can do a whole little lesson on the forward understanding of how this clip comes to be and came to be, on all of its little intricate processes of being first owned, right, or being made in the material machine process to being owned by a private enterprise, for then to me take out my wallet, spend some money, and then have it in my personal possession. There's a lot of processes that go about this in the everyday life, right? You may not think of every single process, and don't worry, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to look everything at with a critical eye, right? Not every single Sharpie is to be deserved and given, this such critical sense of history and uncovering. But this thought experiment, this in discussion time as well, helps us turn those gears, helps us critically look at our other material conditions, stuff that we are more concretely not, familiar with, something that we are for sure, maybe I need to discover and understand this a little more. This is what that process is for. You have this thrown understanding of, let's say, a political misunderstanding, right? But you don't know that it's a political misunderstanding. You just know that it is something. It is thrown. It is the matter of fact as fact. It is this. Forward your understanding, right? And it's kind of hard to do nowadays, right? No one tells you where to go research. No one tells you which book to read. Some people do, but as the matter of fact is fact, that's the only thing to go off of. So doing research for yourself is kind of hard, especially when you don't have literacy in those types of, fields. But having this understanding of that everything comes to you thrown, right? Everything I've just showed you comes to you, right? But I have a little bit of history with it, and I can tell you a little bit more about it. And that is where you get your forwarded understanding, whether it be through conversation like this, or whether it be, Googling or, doing your research on your own. You're having your forwarded understanding, but having this understanding as a material process. I love to say material process, but it's more of just a dialectical process. This process of understanding and dialectics, when it comes to Hegel, your contradictions and such, but, a discussion for another time. But, investigation and discovery, when it comes into this, throw and forward, helps you look, not like, I would say a dumbass, but you're not just out here walking the streets and then be like, yes, it is the way that it is. I see the American flag. I hear freedom. I equate freedom with American flag. Move on with my day. Stop. Oh, hold on. I have a very big gripe against, the Americans, the USA and what it tries and attempts to, stand for, and of course masquerades as. But when you throw and forward, you see the American flag, you forward your understanding. Now, is it what it actually says it is? It is a liberal safe haven for, free individuals of an indiscriminate, equal, all men created equal? I don't think so. Just because they say it is doesn't mean it is. And that comes from our forward understanding of what it is, capitalism, America, imperialism, white colonialism, and all that is what amounts into this, I would say this entire capitalism, this entire hegemony, as we would call it. So this entire hegemony, of course, can only be understood forward from the thrown understandings of, white supremacy, you name it, colonialism, imperialism, bombarding countries out, you name it, it's thrown at you. We can work this forward and find the connections in between each of these phenomena to, build this hegemony and this thought, to correlate this, because nothing is mutually exclusive when it comes to the understanding of the material condition. Everything is connected in some which way or form, and everything has some sort of impact on, one another, to whichever, it may, whether it be ideologically, materially, whether it be immaterially, or of your thought, you make a connection, then connect the dots in your head. But you can also do this, as a material phenomena, right? You see water erode rock over millions of years, of course. But you're not going to say, wow, that rock just became dented out of nowhere. No, through your processes of understanding your material condition through science, you'll understand that water erodes rock, right? The Niagara Falls is like being pushed back 7 centimeters a year. Don't quote me on that, but it's being pushed back every year, right? Because of rock erosion. The Niagara Falls won't always look like that. In thrown understanding, it will look like that. But when you forward it, it's not always going to look like that, right? This is a process of change. And this next bullet point, the processes of becoming, when you become and when you be. There's always constant changing, and it is like a Hegelian point. It is like a cornerstone of change. Like the only constant thing in the universe is change. The only consistency is change. There's no consistency in consistency. So change is a big thing. And I like to go into the philosophical and thinking part, because you don't get into politics without understanding your philosophies, understanding your philosophical hows, your modes of thought, your becoming processes. And this is a bunch of Hegel, right? Hegel's not the only philosopher, but Hegel makes the most sense to me when it comes to becoming and being. Hegel makes the most sense when you are talking about, the articulations of the material condition, right? So our modes of thought have, bounds, at least defines these, these conditions, these sets of thinking. So the liberal mode of thought is like a libertarian, freedom individual. Think of your Rousseau's, Descartes, your 1800s philosophers, your Voltaire's, your liberal mode of thought, right? This freedom, individual, I, me, I become, I think, therefore I am. It is a type of mode of thought. And that mode of thought is what layers the actions of what the individual produces, right? So how do we get so many different individuals? Well, it's because the material condition itself is very different for every single individual, whether geographically or with, the very immediate resources around you, right? So not everyone's going to have that same childhood house. You're not supposed to. Not everyone is going to have this, amount of resources that one individual may have or not, which does craft the journey of the individual's material, experience of life. So not everyone's going to have XYZ. Not everyone, you may have something, but this all helps us craft the material condition as we understand it. And this builds the mode of thought. This builds this is what it is because I have experienced it. This is, when you get into it, empiricism, right? This is your empiric, thought. This I experience, therefore it is fact, or, therefore it explains the material conditions better, and then I move on with life, right? Versus your rationalism, right? Empiricism, your experience, rationalism versus fact, and the combination of both to which makes your experience of life. So, through philosophy and thinking, you don't have to get into all your big Socrates and Aristotle's. You don't have to get into all that. I'm almost on my journey, so I don't know everything. But from what I have read and what I have seen, across all these different mediums, social media platforms, is that people exist with these modes of thought. And these modes of thought outline and layer the actions that people do. So a liberal individual will materialize liberal structures, right, or liberal actions. The communist mode of thought will, of course, materialize communist structures. But this mode of thought is just how you think, nothing really special. And the changing of this mode of thought is just that learning and the discovery, right? An investigation of the material condition or whatever condition you seek to, better your understanding with. So your processes of becoming is very Hegel, but it is a self-emerging process, the self-emerging process, this becoming process. That's why you're the individual as a single person, right? You don't split off into more people. You may think that you can fold out like a map, like when you say, events unfold and then you can clearly see the big picture. I like to think that the individual human, you fold in onto yourself like a piece of putty, like a piece of something stretchy like slime. You fold in onto yourself because it is what you gather from your experience of the material condition and go back into yourself as a self-reflection, to which then you become into something new out of the old. And then you complete that process over and over and over again. It's like dough. I made bread the other day. It was very nice. It's like dough. You stretch the dough, you pull it back onto itself, you fold it in, you knead it, and it all becomes one singular mass again, or it's always a singular mass. But you're changing the form of the dough, but the dough never, loses that identity. It never loses that entity. From that flour, from that, a little bit of sugar, yeast, salt, the oil, maybe your butter, you bring it all together. The parts that make the whole, right, become solidified into a single being, right? So the red blood cells in your body right now working really hard to keep you alive. Your heart's beating and pumping, your lungs doing your brain's doing the thinking thing. All of these processes occur at the very same time for you to experience the life that which you have, right? And the best part is you don't need to know that any of this happens for life to exist and continue. It's a great thing. You don't have to manually breathe. You don't have to manually pump your heart. It is all done for you. And I like to say the term tropism. It's innate. It's automatic. You don't have to put any effort or intent to it for it to happen. For you, at least in the human body, the biology, to not, worry about losing your life, because your body does it for you. Thanks, body. Everyone say thank you, body, because they do it. Your digestion, your stomach, the way you toot, you fart, or way you intake, you listen, smell, and all of these processes, right, are, behind the scenes of what you do not control. So I like to imagine when you eat food, you feel it in your mouth, but then as it goes down your throat, you kind of lose that feeling, and you kind of feel it in here. That is that your body taking over, your tropismatic. This process of becoming has all of these processes go together, right? You, as with your intention, gets the food. Then you let your body do all that nutritional stuff to keep yourself healthy, and you go out and do other stuff, right? You're not worried about what your body does with the food. You know it'll get it done and digest it. That's what it's made for. So this process of becoming the material machine process allows us to understand how life works on a, let's say, macro level, right? This is very micro, right? The microbiome, literally, of the human body can help us understand a macro society at a level and scale, right? And I do this with the explanations of the progression of the coalitions. And I'll give you a little bit of a little summary on that. So the progression of the coalitions, understanding the society on a macro level, right? Equating to the micro level of, an example of the human body's biology. You have different coalitions, or you have different progressions of, working relationships coming together. So one working relationship that we can all, become, familiar with is the human body. This working relationship between the organs, between your mind, between your skin, between your lips and mouth and your intent and all that, all becomes into the one being. You have many parts that make the whole. Hi, hello. That makes it into the, the thing that you see. I am that thing that you see, the amalgamation of what all of this, flesh, blood, organs, and and whatnot make and create for me to make this noise with my mouth for you to hear and whatnot. As you grow larger into these working relationships, this kind of dynamic doesn't go away. If anything, it replicates and emulates onto different progressions and levels. So you take the one individual as the very first coalition, quote unquote, with all of your internal organs and bodies to produce what you ever want to do. Now, you have the familial coalition, and the familial coalition is just other individuals now acting as the organs, as the brain, as all the little tools and accessories as the individual needs to sustain life, to which the entire entity now, as the familial, will bring out a last name, right, to denote their existences, at which they themselves, as the entire unit, produce out a singular value for consumption. Right? So it may not always be the case. Individuals in this coalition can produce for themselves, but the entire coalition as itself. So let's say when you have like a project, right, and you have a team project, you as a team are producing one thing, at which that contribution was handled with all of the parts that make the whole, right? All of the organs inside the body, the heart, the lungs, the rib cage, and all that, all the parts that make the whole. You progress this coalition, and this dynamic still continues, whether it be from the familial, the communal, which is a coalition of families, which is a coalition of individuals, community. I use familiar terms. So it's an individual, family, community, town, city, state, nation, and then, beyond, intercommunal nations or intercommunal relationships. But all of these coalitions. So the nation is basically just a coalition of states, right? The very easiest way to understand it. The United States, one big nation, 50 states, the coalition of nations. And then you go down farther. The state is no more than just a coalition of cities, right? Because you have different cities or different, parts that make the whole, the state. And then you have, from city, the coalition of towns, a coalition of communities, communities, a coalition of families, and then the family is a coalition of individuals. Now, what does that have to do with all this philosophy, thinking and becoming? All of this helps you understand, the micro to the macro, thinking the big picture. And that's probably what I'm trying to get at here right now. This thinking of the big picture and how to think of the big picture. Or people will tell you, think of the big picture, think of all this great stuff. But how, right? And I'm here to tell you that how. In one way, right? It is not the only way for you to understand how to think of how the bigger picture. It's just one way. But at least this one way can help you, at least build a foundation or a footstep, a pedal onto your preferred understanding of the world, right? Whatever I spit out and conject, provide to you, don't take it with a grain of salt, but, take it with like a consideration where it's like, it comes out and makes sense to me. It may not make sense to you. And that's the whole point of life. I don't think it's ever supposed to make sense for anyone else besides the individual observer who has made that understanding. Because I love to say we make life of what we want it to be, but we are forced to do so. And that forcing of is that flow of time, that never being able to go back, that living and needing to do stuff. right? And that needing to, live, the subsistence, the fulfillment of the subsistence, this water, this food, this shelter, the safety, psychological health, and whatnot. We have all of these restraints that that forge and craft the way we live, right? We don't hunt our food anymore. People get jobs to get a paycheck to then go out to the store and get food. The process is a little different. So instead of waking up, grabbing your spear, doing some stretches, and then go hunting for a fox or a cattle or whatever, now you wake up, get dressed for work, go to a bourgeois business, and then 8 hours, 10 hours in a day, wait for your paycheck at the end of the week. Hopefully not two, God forbid, monthly paychecks, your monthlies. And then you use that money, your allotted labor value of, extracted surplus value, only given just a little bit, to then you can then go get your food, right? You're not waking up with a spear in hand, risking your life, right? Hopefully not coming back with any mortal injuries from battlefield and trying to get food for your family. Now you could just work a job in a civilized society. Isn't that great? Now that we have addressed, society, the point of society is to not live like barbarians, but to live, civilized, quite literally, a civilized society. But to have these means of producing non-threatening conditions to live life, right? Waking up and fearing for your life that you might get attacked by a lion, terrifying. No one wants to live like that. And thankfully, not most of us have to. Some of us do. Metaphorically, a majority of us do. Waking up, fearing to go to work, or not wanting to go to this place. It's all natural. I would say it's natural, anyways. But I'm gonna go now. Summarize. We're gonna talk a little bit. I know this is halfway point, and then we'll just go bullet point, back down. This is the best way I found of doing it. But yeah, you don't wake up spear in hand, or with a bow and arrow, a slingshot, with your grass skirt in a dirt hut that you made, or some other primitive way back when structure. Now you live in a house with walls, with technology and stuff, with your nice mugs and stuff, all of the I won't say luxuries, but all of the quality of life things that make it bearable. And our standard of living has raised, our living conditions have raised, of course, since way back when. But you have to understand how those things became to be, right? You can have a whole bunch of chairs made, like when you go to a supermarket, you go to the mall or wherever, you go to a marketplace style, you have a bunch of the products lined up and they're not being used for anything. The only thing they're being used for is the keeping for the sale, right? So they have a bunch of items in stock. When you go to the store, at least for us, for our, indoctrinated selves, going to the store, it's nothing, nothing wow. A whole bunch of cereal boxes in the cereal aisle stacked. We think nothing of it. Now that, we have, forward understanding of how these stuffs works, especially when you're decolonial and, pro-indigenous and stuff, you see all of these products, you're like, wow, that seems kind of wasteful. Even though the product inventory may move out that quick, it's just the visual of seeing a bunch of boxes on the shelves, a bunch of food on the shelves, a bunch of products, just sitting there collected en masse. It should concern you. I get if it doesn't now, but it concerns me when I walk into a store and I see a bunch of everything everywhere, right? And it's normalized. People walk by and be like, what can I choose to get for myself today? Where does that freedom come from? The freedom comes from the fact that you have the abundance, or at least, the visual of the abundance, while individuals in the rest of some other parts of the world don't. They don't have that luxury of abundance and choice and freedom to do so. So this is not to guilt trip you, right? No, we don't guilt trip around here. But let's help you understand how the world works in the ways it becomes, right? And that becoming process, right? You have your modes of thought. That thought is normalized. All the stuff on the shelves, it's free. It's free to do that, right? I can choose wherever or not to gain whatever I want to out of, the store or whatnot and whatever. But I am free to do that. I have freedom, choice, right? The liberal mode of thought. I am free to do whatever I want. And we talk about freedoms, right? Where do they come from? Because I have the freedom to do a lot of stuff, but the billionaire over there has freedom to exploit, the working class. The individual has freedom to, harm and kill the environment. That's their freedom because they have the right to do that. Now, you have little laws and your, litigations and whatnot to prevent people from doing that. But is it going to stop anyone? I don't think so, because when people do stuff, shit happens. And laws are no more just a piece of paper. Now, don't quote me on that. Laws are made in reaction, at least in the US sense, to establish a sort of decorum. And this decorum followed emulates and reproduces out of the actions that people do. When people follow the law, it becomes the norm, becomes established, right? So soon enough, the law of, an XYZ will become baked within the scheme of life. You are then therefore validating that law, that existence, which continues to oppress over you. Standardized mode of thought, right? Your mode of thought allows you to, layer your actions with all your stuff in the way how you think. When you are baked within that scheme of doing stuff, or baked within that scheme of having, all of these processes going around you, it's going to seem normal. Like when you go to the stores and you see all these boxes and shelves, this stuff stocked and all this water cases everywhere. It's normal. People can come buy it whenever they want, but you need money for that. And you have to have the freedom to do that. There's a lot of contradictions when it comes to this stuff, but we can address those later. But I like to have this philosophical understanding of why people do stuff. Everyone themselves has some sort of philosophy, as I would call it, or just thought, how people think, how people, intake the information which they, understand it to be thrown at them and then forwarded to what they understand the world to be, right? And this is how you get people, so many different people living in a society, right? The point of society is not to get along with everyone, but to build something greater than the rest of us, at which takes care of the rest of us, or at least takes care of that of the interest at which drives society. The capitalist society, the interest driven and the benefit thereof goes to the capitalist, of course, right? The bourgeois entity, the ruling class capital owning entity, right? You work paycheck to paycheck, not a capitalist individual. You don't own capital. Petit bourgeois, small business, kinda, but there is a distinction, right? Is if that small business owner just quits tomorrow and has employees and then lives off of that, capitalism. The individual is not petit bourgeois, but they are bourgeois entire because of the capital that they own, whether it be at different levels, right? So capitalists don't have to be big conglomerate, giant billionaires. Capitalists could be an individual so long as they have capital at which sustains their material conditions for their labor does not provide those conditions, that sustenance, right? So the individual capitalist does not have to be some big mongrel. It could really be just an individual who owns enough capital at which their exploited, labor and their value sustains their preferred material conditions, or at least sustains their condition. They don't have to work. Basically, if the individual does not have to work having that small business, they are not, petit bourgeois in the common sense. I would say they are bourgeois entire because of the way they handle and the relationship at which they have with their capital. Because that's how we denote these existences, right? Proletariat versus bourgeois, your relation between the means of production. So if you sell your labor, right, and you earn a paycheck, and that is all you have to offer for the market, or is that all you have to offer and have to give that? You are proletariat. You are an individual working class member. You have to have the sale of your labor available for you to even gain sustenance and gain subsistence in this individual life, right? In our lacking society, I would say. So the sale of your labor, right? You are proletariat. If you don't have to sell your labor, or if you own capital at which sustains your life, capital, bourgeois. And the distinction is very, there is a gradual period. That's why some ideologies and anarchists and some socialists, the petit bourgeois, right, are enemies of the working class. I wouldn't say so. The petit bourgeois are in the transitioning period between, and it's all about the intention and use of that capital, right? So if the small business owner is using that capital and using the means of production in ways to support the proletariat, the working class, then cool, great. It's just you're working with the system, boo, gross, but you are using that intent and the means of production to help the proletariat, yay, great. But if the petit bourgeois small business individual is seeking that use of capital to bring themselves up, quote unquote, to the level of bourgeois and the level of billionaire, then, well, of course. Well, the individual is not intent, right? Even though they have the means of production within themselves, their capabilities and capacities, they are not using it as intentful or intentional to the benefit of the working class. So therefore, that individual is more so aligning with the, bourgeois entire. But if that petit bourgeois still cannot quit their job or to quit their business and call it a day and have employees, if that individual is the sole owner, the sole proprietor of that, business or that enterprise, they're working class. It doesn't matter if you call it enterprise private or not, right? They have to work. Their labor, pours into their business. I wish that business sustains them. It is just paychecks with extra steps, and it's inconsistent at that too, right? Your petit bourgeois, especially the ones starting out, do not have the such capital to call themselves anywhere near a bourgeois ruling class individual, right? So petite bourgeois, is a conversation to have, but there is a big distinction. If you and your any part of your labor sustains your life, through the sale of, outright, flat out, like working class, right? Even if it be like the petite bourgeois who has like a kind of comfortable life, but still needs to show up at their business or at their working class. If that petite bourgeois can just go off, do whatever for months and business be fine, they're no longer petite bourgeois. But there's a little bit of a sidetrack there. So we just go back into our philosophy and thinking. And the philosophy, of course, the petite bourgeois mode of thought is a very distinct mode of thought. It is both owning the means of production, not as a liberation tool, but as a tool of becoming, and having that liberal, that I built this. When it comes to business owners, it's all under the trademark and under the individual person, the CEO or the boss. I did this. I did the entire business. Even though that individual, I always go to Walmart CEO. Did that Walmart CEO ring up every single customer across the nation? Did that Walmart CEO actually go out and, help fill the bags, stock the shelves, go out and clean up the store? No. That's not how it works. I'm still not sure why these CEOs are still granted that. But of course, you talk about ownership, liberal and ownership, and all that, and then you can kind of understand why. When you get into your Rousseaus and Descartes, your Voltaires, your other Enlightenment thinker philosophers, I think therefore I am, this liberal ownership, right? They talk about property, and property is a very big thing when it comes to liberal ideology. Property is like one of the core tenets, and the handling of that property must be respected and must be given this attention, and the intention so that is an intentful towards the progression of society. Don't quote me on liberal ideology. I haven't read that much. I've read a bit, not too much, but I know and read enough that liberal ideology is this privatized, this reactionary, this predatory, competitive scheme, or these canons of thought, or the canons of thinking. So we get into philosophy and thinking. The petite bourgeois have their own mode of thought. The bourgeois themselves have their own mode of thought. The communist has their own mode of thought. Everyone has their own mode of thought. Individuals have their own mode of thought. You may not align yourself with any ideology. You just think for yourself. That itself is a mode of thought. And understanding that the mode of thought itself, just a neutral term at which guides the individual's actions, helps you root yourself based in principles so that you know and understand that people don't just do things just to do things, right? I'm just going to do this because of that. There is at least some sort of thought. There is a presence of a thought before an action is occurred, even if that thought is tropismatic, innate and automatic, even if the individual does not think. A reaction itself is some sort of thought at which layers before the action perceived, or your thought, right? Your thought layers the action. So I would say the thought comes before the action, right? I think, therefore I am, but you're missing a point before the I think. You exist. First you be, then you can think, therefore you are, or therefore then you can become, right? Your Rousseau's, your 1800 philosophers, Descartes talking about I think therefore I am. It helped the individual break away from the absolutism of the monarchy, of the feudal times, of the feudal mode of thought, which is absolutism. Thanks, comrade, who said that a while ago. But you have these modes of thought and these different modes of production, which allows people to express themselves. So, of course, when you have first the liberal mode of thought under feudalism, those individuals materialized liberal structures in which the free market capitalism has reigned, right, into the imperialism now because of that mode of thought. When people think, people can do. If people don't think, people don't do in those certain ways, right? People will still think and they will do, but it won't be based in principle and structured. When you have your 1800, 1700, philosophers talking about your white Eurocentric, liberal ideology, right? This very right-wing conservative, property, me, mine, it is mine, free individual. You have the materializations of that mode of production as a result of that thought, right? So liberal mode of thought produces a capitalist mode of production. An absolutist mode of thought produces a feudal mode of production. I would say a socialist mode of thought, for lack of better terms, produces a socialist mode of production. Now, the thought precedes the action. You cannot have an action without that thought. It would just be aimless. It wouldn't have any base or principle, any structure to it, to which it will allow to defend itself from other thoughts and other modes of production and being. Right? When you a little sidetrack here, but when we talk about the socialist experiments in other different countries that which it was as exercised, you have to understand it didn't fail by itself because it failed because it's bad. There were a bunch of internal and external conditions upon which those experiments had to fight and address at the same time to which added to their strenuous, existence, their activities at which they committed to. A lot of conditions, did not allow for that development as capitalism had, right? Because capitalism basically grew unchecked, unfeathered, right? They just did whatever they want, or unfettered. They did whatever they want, and then they became and they did without very little opposition, right? Well, mostly because colonialism is that opposition, right? It is that opposing force. So it embodied the position of oppression. We have to understand this, term. I'll bring this into our second bullet point, throw and forward when it comes to colonialism. So colonialism thrown where it's like just people conquering land. It's a little bit more than that. Of course there's more than that. But to the individual's thrown understanding of colonialism, for me, it would go straight to America, colonialism, appropriation for me, right? Just a couple words, colonialism. To colonize, right? An act of, right? Forwarding understanding of that. Colonizing is much more than just taking stuff. There is an establishment of presence. There's an establishment of ideology which materialized through that action. So that colonized mode of thought, which exists within the canons of that liberal, or the scheme of that liberal thought, bakes into the scheme of life of individuals living who are colonized, right? So like South Africa, the apartheid, and of course in Palestine, the apartheid, right? The illegal occupations and stuff, this colonization materializes structures at which the individual then consumes as a result of that, materialization, which then helps in the processes of becoming, right? Whether it be becoming with or against, the processes of becoming are, I would say, stimulated by this materialization of the fact of colonizing. It's not a good thing though, right? Colonizing is not a good thing, but it's the matter of fact that has happened. Then we get to discuss how and why it happened. As a colony or colonizing, right? You are appropriating land. Land appropriation, boo, we don't like that. Land appropriation sucks because one, the individual colonizers going in does not know the land. Therefore, that lacking of the knowledge of the land already at a disadvantage when it comes to the production on top of that land. Boo. And second, you're not just only appropriating the means of production when it comes to, that land, but also the lives, the culture, all of the, the activities and such going on at which you just bombarded in as being the colonizer, right? So colonizing, as a matter of fact, is just people going in and taking stuff. Forward your understanding and investigate, discover what colonizing is, right? Very bad. It's not a very good thing. I would say it's a very silly thing to do. I was childish to go ahead and colonize because you're not taking in the fact and the importance of life or your understanding of the material condition, because it is self-destructive to engage in this behavior, right? You're always seeking and seeking more. Capitalism is infamous for being this infinite ideology to then become materialized in a finite material space, right? This gives you that false bravado. This is like, I am me, I the world is mine to conquer because I think, therefore I am, I say so, boo. Appreciation over appropriation. I think we'll talk about that either next week or in a little bit, because it is a core, at least to my mode of thought, this appreciation versus appropriation and this articulation of these two terms. So, but when we go to the means of production, which goes very well into this relationship of appreciation and appropriation. So the means of production, right, as we're circling way back, goes into the appreciation of labor and the appropriation of labor. And labor is this, core figure that we talk about when we talk about that production, the means of production. So what do I mean when I say the appreciation of labor? So the term appreciation itself is not some like huggy, lovey-dovey, but appreciation is this understanding, this breaking down, this discovery and investigation of the entity at hand, the object at hand, in which this case it is labor, the appreciation of labor, understanding how labor, not just from me in the ways that I'm, have the capacity to do and produce, but concerning the appreciative of all of the labor's concerned. So whether it be in this group right now, I'm pretty sure every single one of you has a skill important for contribution, right? Every single one of you has that something. Don't think of, anything that you do is, not important. Every single one of you in this little room right here has something to contribute. That is the appreciation of labor. And I know that every single one of you has this ability and power. However, we do not have the means to produce such an outcome because it has been privatized, and privatized as such because of the appropriation of labor. Now, the appropriation of labor, just like the appreciation, it's an act, it's a doing. But the appreciation is a study, while the appropriation is an act. Now, appropriation in this sense, it may seem like a bad word or something to disconnect yourself, but I use the word appropriation as to denote this specific, relationship at which the bourgeois have with the means of production. So, but appropriation is simply just doing, making that which is not yours, yours, or making it at which do what you want it to do. In this case, labor. Appropriating labor means that you have a pool of labor. Let's take this group, right, for example, and making the group or the individual laborers do what you want to do, right? In this appropriation, it is a definite sequence. It is a process in which appropriation comes first in the bourgeois, then appreciation. But what are you appreciating? You're appreciating profits and the study and the acting and acknowledging thereof, the profits of which that appropriation of labor comes after. So when you appropriate labor, at least in this capitalist sense, you are doing so for the appreciation of a profit or that materialization of that labor. So when a person makes a chair, I always go to chair making. When a person makes a chair with all the wood, the lumber, the glue, and all the tools, the saws, and whatnot, value is created at the moment that chair is done. At the moment that chair can be sit on and put in someone's house, labor value has been made. Value has been rearranged. You could say created, but more materially true, has been rearranged in the material condition to then a value consumption is actually worth the money being spent. But value is created or rearranged at that point. Profit is not. Profit is realized at the point of sale. And if we go back to Thornstein Veblen, just a while ago, the endeavors of the businessman ends with the sale, the transaction of the sale, because profit has been realized. Thereafter, businessmen don't care about that. Businessmen don't care about what happens after the product is sold. They will care about how the product is made, because every time in the point of production, profits can be made, or profits can be better realized. You cut production costs here, you raise the price here, you make labor costs more, and all of a sudden at the transaction and point of sale, profit has been realized, but value is created at the moment the individual is done with their labor and raw materials. And when we talk about Karl Marx's raw materials, don't think of it just like iron ore, your rocks, your crystals. Don't think of it as like your lumber, your stone, your masonry. Raw materials is simply just the materials at hand, your resources, and then your labor. So when making this phone, right, when I'm producing the protections on the phone, and in this little example, the screen protector comes from a multitude of different processes which made the screen protector. The phone case itself, right, probably blow molded or something, or whatever process made it. But these are considered raw materials for which I produce the protection of the phone. And then you go a step further into the phone itself. The computer chips come from somewhere, and the chips, the boards, the camera, and all the programming of which come from somewhere, right? But those are considered raw materials when assembling with labor. So that's just a little bit of economic theory, Karl Marx, some Capital Volume 1 for you, right? Just the distinction between raw materials from economic theory and understanding it versus like actual IRL nature raw materials, water, lumber, grass, and whatnot, dirt, right? So losing a little bit of track, went off a little tangent there. But owns means of production, appreciation, appropriation, labor, appreciation, appropriation. So when we get into that labor appreciation, as we did before, there is a better understanding of how that labor can be utilized and then appropriated after. Because we don't just appreciate labor, just appreciate it, right? We want that labor to do something. But first, we appreciate it. We understand it more, right? You wouldn't put a mechanic on a sewing machine and you would put a seamstress under a car. Even though they both can produce a labor, right? That is just simply the mindless appropriation of labor. If I know this individual has a particular skill set or the means to produce such, I will align that individual much closer to which that individual can express themselves with the means and tools, within their ability, within their capabilities, their material processes. So the seamstress goes on the sewing machine, the mechanic goes on the car and whatnot, right? Because that what makes sense. That is an appreciation of labor. The capitalist doesn't care whether or not you can do X, Y, Z or bullshit. They just want to know that you can get the shit done. And that is harmful to production. That is not a very, great way to go about the organizing of your labor. Because I would say you're doing a lot of, wasting of labor. Thornstein Veblen gets into conspicuous waste and waste as a form of a tool of oppression. But we get into that a little different time. Hello. The appreciation and appropriation of our labor exists within this dynamic, right? Because we appreciate, then we quote unquote appropriate. But then the appropriation is just doing what we want it to do. The appropriation first, you're good. But the appropriation first, right, in this process, the definite sequence, allows the individual to, or the bourgeois owner, to not extract the most out of that labor, right? You want people where they need to be, not you want people doing what you want to do, right? Because there is great effort coming out of passion. Owning the means of production, right? Plus passion, that's a banger right there, right? I used to love working on cars. Now I don't. Now I just do it for money. Now I just do it for the quick, favor. I don't charge much, but I like to work on cars. Now I don't. The passion was gone for me. Doesn't mean that the means of production has left me. I just choose to do different stuff like this. Like this stuff is really cool. Right? I didn't pour my heart and soul into this, but there was a passion. I did it for a reason, and it wasn't for a profit motive, right? The profit motive, as this inherent human nature, greed, is kind of silly. I would say it lacks a forward understanding of how the individual exists in the material condition. Because when a child isn't born, the child isn't asking for profits, money, chart with the green arrow pointing up, and their stocks, their exchanges, how their portfolio is doing. No, that's not really human nature. But then you go to a more fundamental greed type, and I wouldn't say it's greedy, because when people have, everything that they need, it's actually pretty easy to get people to do what you want. Because if people don't have to worry about they're losing their house, people don't have to worry about their next meal, people don't have to worry about their next time, something bad's gonna happen. People are willing to do a lot. And that's what it means to take care of your community. But of course, capitalism wouldn't be able to reproduce that. It is too individualistic. There's many processes which go against this type of organizing our labor for the communal benefit, because everything has been privatized, right? Housing's privatized, the ability to make clean water privatized, all of these forms and functions privatized. And so therefore, baked within the scheme of life of individuals willing and wanting to express, they will find themselves in the schemes of privatizing, right? That's where you get your hobbies turned into profit projects. Oh, you like to, make clothes? Well, sell them online. Oh, you like to, do X, Y, you like to paint? Sell them online, or sell them. So why would I want to sell them? They're my painting. I want to keep them. But if I want to live, maybe someone will pay, right? And then so I can get a quick buck so then I can continue living to keep continuing what I want to do. That sounds very predatory, competitive. I would say it's very inefficient to operate like this, right? To the need to turn your hobby into a profit project. And I've had my fair share of project passions, profit, stuff that I turn my hobby into whatnot. This was also almost one of them. I found it very hard to do that because owning the means of production is one thing. I get to do stuff, but asking people for that labor is another thing. I guess working at a job is a little better because then you get paycheck, but then you yourself are exploited. There's a whole bunch of contradictions not addressed that allows people to do stuff, right? Because when you hear a CEO or a businessman, I did it all by myself, but then they have like 30 employees at their business, and then they're like, no, I work smarter, not harder. They do all the hard work. I just bring in the profit. What? Say that again. You're contradicting yourself. But I couldn't get into that, the business lifestyle. I don't know, something about it. As you can see, I'm waning off, and it is 3 minutes over, just checking the time. So that was a very good point to stop. Means of production, what is this? Throwing forward, philosophy, becoming, matter of fact. Really nice, clean, cool session. If you have any questions, please ask. I'll be here for a little bit. This does end our little session today. I might go on yap a little bit more. But if you do need to go. It is past, that hour mark. So I'm not here to hold anyone, but if you have any questions, please ask. We can conversate and whatnot. I'll leave at 5:07, 7 minutes, 8. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to say something, ask, talk, whatnot, please do so. If not, that was it. Love you all. Take care. I'll still be here if you want to talk. If not, great. Love having you here, guys.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
How did you like become the person who does this?
Great, lovely question. As a decentralized organization with GSUS, we encourage everyone to do anything. This started off because I had a knack for yapping, and then just so happened I had a knack for politics, but more so philosophy and expressing myself as such. So I just turn on the camera, be here at certain times every week, and then I just kept doing it. And next week I'll be here too. Isn't that great? But to answer your question for real, it just took me being up here doing stuff and then recording it and then having it out and then going through this process. It just got me doing it, right? I'm not here. I'm not getting no one here at GSUS is getting paid to do anything, right? So we just do stuff however we want to do stuff, and we change is what we need. But I'm only here because I want to be here. That's why I'm
So like if you know how there's like like chats or not chats, channels for like different like areas, like could someone do like a California like that like this meeting but like for California for example, or like a smaller area but like essentially like this, but instead of one person leading it's like all the people who live in whatever, you know?
Yeah, we encourage people to do host their own workshops, whether it be their own political discussion times. It's an intentional political discussion time. So yeah, I think I was thinking about doing some because I'm in California myself. So I was thinking about doing a state meeting for that stuff. Danny Pooh got that Colorado meeting. I think I saw that the other day. But yeah, whenever you want to start your workshops, do them and then it'll be fun and whatnot. But as far as California or a smaller group, I was thinking about it. Anyone can start their own. If it's something like this, people can yap and have discussions and whatnot and talk. But I think it just takes people getting into the rhythm and having, of course, the ability and time to do it. I'm grateful to be unemployed. Boo. My money's inconsistent. I'm a mechanic, fix cars, but not everyone's car is broken at the same time. So, but it is due to that ability to be available and having that consistency, right?
Would it be Southern California? Because if it's Southern California, I've uh, been in IWY meetings. I've been a translator on that. I'm fluent in Spanish and English, and I'm located in SoCal.
No, I'm a NorCal, Bay Area, woot woot. But there are a bunch of SoCal people here, lovely SoCal members to you can reach out to.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I'm totally new here. I was a union organizer for healthcare workers and musicians for a lot of years. I'm trying to find there's a meeting that's supposed to start now, but this is my first time on Discord. And when I click on group meeting, it doesn't say there's anyone there.
I think this is the only meeting going on. Did someone because I don't know anything everything about this. Did someone organize another
On the
meeting?
calendar, it said there's a meeting that starts at 8 p.m. Eastern time.
Was it the calendar from their website?
Yeah.
Okay, so that calendar is not up to date.
Oh,
Technically in the
okay.
Discord, yeah. The strategy team has been planning their own meetings. I think they have like a when to meet, so I can tag you in the strategy team. I'm not sure if they're having one, if they're planning one anytime soon, but we definitely encourage people to stay active and consistent with that. So we can tag you in the strategy team meeting. I'm not sure when they're having it. We're also trying to get folks to organize, these meetings on a local level as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm brand new today. I was just checking out my state channel of Hawaii, my stolen kingdom of Hawaii, where I reside as an honored guest. Yeah, I helped to end apartheid, and I was a successful union organizer, so I wanted to connect with that group of people. I have some ideas.
You
Where
said
would I
Hawaii?
find
Mhm.
sorry, an up-to-date schedule?
You can look in the calendar. So I'm not sure if the strategy team as a whole has been setting any meetings, but there is a GSUS Hawaii chapter. I can get you their information, get in contact. They should be, actively trying to set up meetings at a local level soon here. So I can get you that information.
That would be great.
Awesome.
Will I just get an email or something about it? I'm sorry, I'm used to Zoom, and this is the first time I've been in here.
I can reach out to you on Discord, so it'll probably be a direct message. I'll grab that information. possibly in a couple of few moments here before we get off here, possibly like after.
No rush. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for being here.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Absolutely.
Love the energy, love the spirit. Don't lose that revolutionary spirit. You know, it may be months, years before anything big and grand happens, but every time we take a step, it's revolutionary. Every time we breathe, existing against the system, I would say it's revolutionary. Learning a second language may be revolutionary. Owning the means of production. I just picked up a sewing machine and I have a printer, so I could print the zines myself. You know, so having these tools and means, nurturing your body, having a good healthy diet, working out and such, all in effort of this banded, this collective revolution. Woo, woo.
Hey,
Yeah,
Jaden.
I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree. I've been on a lot of picket lines. I helped to win the grocery strike and healthcare worker strike and musicians union, and so I got some skills to share. I'll fill out my skills card. I didn't do that yet.
Sweet. So I dropped Hawaii information in the chat. They have an Instagram, a Blue Sky, and also a link tree. But I'll try to get the specific organizer for that and connect you with them. So I'll probably send you a message and DM with that info. Yeah, Jaden, I just wanted to congrat on the conversation, the discussion tonight. It was really intriguing. Especially about the forward thinking. And I shared something in the chat. It's Sister Soldiers is talking about how the educational system itself just failed to teach knowledge of self and whatnot. And we know it's by design and whatnot, but that I think that definitely is critical to grasp here, because it does prevent us from even stepping into thinking about operating from forward critical thinking and whatnot, thinking about the world around us, because we haven't had that knowledge of self. And a lot of us, a lot of adults, have a hard time even becoming because of that. And we have a lot of adults out here definitely that's not functional, but it's by design and whatnot. And it stops us, from evolving, that forward thinking, that lack of, the critical analysis of, the relationships and connections that we have with each other, with the material conditions and whatnot. It prevents, change, evolution, and the whole 9 yards. Definitely, I'm hoping, with this rising consciousness, discussions like this, we can, heighten that awareness and hopefully, push society, humanity into the next phase. We need to change. Our thoughts have to, evolve and whatnot. We've been static, doing the same thing, business as usual for so long.
Right on. Love it. Yep, exactly. Raising consciousness, being consistent, education, having all that, but having an open mind, having a place to express yourself, because there's no places, like third places shut down. No one has a place to express themselves. So even if it's online for something like this, to have people express their mind, ask questions, coming out of their shell, because that's how else do you build that confidence without actually doing it? Right? Theory only gets you so much and so far. Even though I love theory myself, but the praxis of which is entirely more important than the studying thereof. But the studying thereof, of course, is not to be ignored. They go hand in hand. But I just think action itself, like getting out there, puts more of that, materialization to the front of people's eyes for the people to understand. Because if they don't get it here, they should get it here. And sometimes food, they get it really here really well. Cool. It's almost at
And we're-
15 minutes after. Oh yeah, what's up, Day?
I was just gonna ask Cambria, Cambria, if you can hear me, if you're familiar. You say this is your first time on Discord. I can help you navigate to the chat. I just dropped some information about the Hawaii chapter.
Thank you. Yes, I got it. I'm on the Hawaii chapter. Really
Okay, sweet.
appreciate it.
My bad, Jay.
Oh no, you're good.
No, it's all right. I love to hear these young voices. I turned 70 2 weeks ago, but I helped to end Vietnam and end apartheid and won a lot of strikes I worked for Planned Parenthood, so I'm totally in. And I love the age range in this because that's what we need.
Absolutely.
Giga base.
Happy belated birthday. Oops, sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
happy birthday,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Happy late birthday.
Yes. No, but you're definitely right about that, Cambria, because we do need a wide variety of people, age ranges, backgrounds, left, right, blue, red. It doesn't matter. We need everybody on board pretty much. Kind of goes back to what I forget who was saying, but the just pretty much raising consciousness and awareness.
That's for sure. There's too many people that live in this stolen country, the Kingdom of Hawaii, that are white haoles like me that don't have any education about colonialism or respect for the culture. So that's what I mostly have been doing 20 years I've been here, is helping
Right.
protect the lands and the water and the ocean. And now on Maui, like since the fire, 12,000
Yeah.
people went. So I'm a therapist, so I'm counseling traumatized people and working in a coalition to keep Lahaina lands in Hawaiian
Mhm.
hands.
You do incredible work. I gotta really commend you for that.
Well, it's just imperative, you know?
Right. No, yeah,
All the
I get
brown
that.
people are getting kicked out of their own country, and I just, no, I can't stand for
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. It's not right.
Nope. And the third D to our 3Ds, because healthcare have 3Ds, Luigi have 3Ds, the general strike has 3Ds. Decentralization, read that backwards. Decentralization, dissent, and diversify. Diversity is, of course, is how we will, reign this revolution, because it takes everyone, right? It takes everyone from this ideological standpoint. So it's like, there's one quote where it was like, I don't care what you think, but it's like if you think, well, what is like if you advocate for some, but if your actions threaten my right to exist, I don't fuck with you. Heavily plagiarized, but it's like you have to see eye to eye on these things, right? Where it's like if the thing that you want to do threatens my existence, like, we're not having it.
Hmm. Absolutely.
James Baldwin, there it is, James Baldwin.
Ah, we need to get back to a place too where people can disagree and not get crazy. I don't know. You ever see those Congress, those little friggin' meetings they hold, and it's just like this is high school. Like this is the high school cafeteria. Like what's happening here?
Man babies, I call them. Man children. People having
Yes.
it's
Yes.
childish. Ugh, it's gross.
It's like, yeah, I can disagree with you and maybe see some good points you have. I don't have to call you out your name and, I don't know. I don't know. We need to get that back. We need to get that decorum back somehow, like some sort of respect for one another.
I think it's going to start with us learning how to respect each other and our neighbors better in the country. I think our politicians are unfortunately just a reflection of who we are as Americans.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, yeah.
I've tried calling some of the people that I care about and I think have in the past cared about me, and it's clear that we have different perspectives, and
Yeah.
it worries me how much we're not able to connect and they're not able to hear at this time. At least it doesn't seem like they're able to.
Are willing.
It's really concerning.
Mm.
Whataboutisms come up a lot. That seems to be the knee jerk for a lot of people. Is they get some whataboutisms programmed into them, and They're just very uncomfortable with the situations they've been in, and they're ready for any kind of change, and they're tired of thinking critically about what kind of change,
Right.
and that they're being taken advantage of. Some of them are actually bad people, but most of them wouldn't be bad people if they weren't aligning themselves with the actually bad people
Right.
or sitting back and doing nothing, which is incredibly tempting. It's very tempting to not be seen speaking up, not be heard,
Hmm.
because of where the road we're on could very well go. As any
Yeah.
student of history will tell you,
Hmm.
dangerous time to disagree with those in power, um, and it could get a lot more dangerous. So I get it, but we got to speak up while we have a voice.
Especially the ones that can.
Yep.
My family actually has to self-deport themselves because my step family is from Mexico and my dad actually is from Jamaica. He hasn't realized yet. He hasn't realized yet what's going on. Unfortunately, if he could have voted, would have voted for who we have. It's insane.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think the amount of misinformation out there is a historically high amount. I work in the tech industry, and I keep up with all the tech trends, and I mean all of them, to a level of pretty functional understanding. In a few cases, I can turn my hand to a few of the newer AI tricks, and I know what tools are available to fight the war we're fighting, and
Mhm.
we are fighting a very, very uphill battle.
Mm.
And the nature of which has never been seen anywhere.
I
Yes, there's
do have
always
a
been
question.
lying,
Sorry.
but there's the amount of systemic, like automated trickery that is
Hmm.
convincing. Some of it is, I don't know. The only reason I doubt some things sometimes is because I'm not certain they're wrong, or I'm not certain they're right, but everything I can tell about it technologically is indiscernible from something that's real. But I know that there is, when it's well used, the technology is that tricky and can be that
Hmm.
tricky. Most of it's pretty lame and can be sussed out by most people, but a lot of people are really falling for even entry level AI misinformation, like really, really bad, like standard, scam email stuff. There's a certain portion of the population that are a large portion that are just blind to it. Like some people are face blind, some people are tone deaf, some people are colorblind.
Hmm.
A lot of people do not have the skills, like good people, don't have the skills to see through when they're literally being lied to their face in the most obvious way. And that's that's a problem that I'm looking for help with. Just how to connect personally with people. I so often I'm thinking we need to just be encouraging people to get off of all the social media platforms, and get back to connect with your neighbors.
Hmm.
Get, you know, make them comfortable with being in person and talking about things that you know are scary and you might disagree about. You know, and it's the
People would be
scale of
more
that
careful.
problem is huge.
Completely 100% agree. I did have a question since you're in tech, Kaiser guy. So since there is kind of like a flooding of the zone with all of the disinformation, does that mean that we have to flood the zone with correct information, or like do you think that that would be a way to
It's
go about that, or
you got to pick your battles. I do think we do need to be getting out there more assertively. I don't know that
Mhm.
aggressive is the right tone, but
Right.
definitely assertively, um, with
Remember,
correct information. Give an example of what good information looks like. Not just here's a fact, but also a source that they can actually click in and make an effort for that to be a reputable source, like a classically reputable source.
Right.
And
Okay.
be ready for one follow-up. Like if when you disagree with someone, it, it can be daunting to recognize, oh, I'm having a disagreement and I care about this. But try to stick around and have a classy single follow-up, whether it be a question or a rebuttal or something. And then if you're not being engaged with in good faith, or they're just not warming up to you, I do think you need to cut your losses and give them some space without actively becoming aggressive or rejecting them, and lower the temperature. A lot of those people you're disagreeing with online, as well,
Mhm.
1 to 2 out of 3 entities online are bots. They're just literally bots. Um, and for now, the people that you know online, oh, I've seen that person online before. I've known them for years. For now, they're probably real, and the responses are from them. But a lot of the people you've never heard of online, you're crossing paths with, those are bots. And don't argue with them because you only have so much energy. Um, and if you argue with people that you know, they're we're emotional first and we're rational second. The tone can quite quickly start and stay, or even start neutral and go sour. And that's no way to build connections. Um, and it's a great way to burn connections and get blocked and tune people out. It's a it's a really tricky problem we're facing, and I think a lot of our efforts really do need to focus on getting out in person, get cold, get wet, do the awkward thing, go knock on people's doors, bring them a gift of, like, I don't know, a food bar and a leaflet or a QR code they can scan from your phone that has some kind of short blurb and a call to action, and maybe an invite to, like some event in the community, and be a refreshing, like, positive personal interaction that makes them less dependent on the digital world that they've come entrapped in or have gotten numb to. There's a huge middle that's so sick of the nonsense on both sides of the political spectrum and just have no time and energy for it. They're working their asses off and they're just burned out and they're so alone and disconnected. I think there'd be a lot of low-hanging fruit if you go knock door to door, canvass your neighborhood. Again, even if they're just scanning a QR code or you're texting them a link and inviting them to a hangout where it's aggressively friendly, you know, and accepting and, hey, yeah, we're gonna disagree and that's gonna be okay. Um, I feel like we need a lot of that on a massive scale. At least
That's
beg people
brilliant.
with all the kindness in your eyes that you can muster to
Mhm.
please, please cancel their get off all the social media and call the people that love them and that they love and reconnect because it's never been more important than it is right now.
I 100% agree with that. Wow, yeah.
We're fighting. If you fight a digital fight, we're fighting a losing fight.
Mhm.
The tools that are available, we'd have to sink very, very low and fight very, very dirty. And we'd have to build a world and a solution just as dirty as the one we're fighting to use the tools they're using. The digital space isn't safe. For now, I think I trust I'm talking to real people. But knowing what technology is capable of right now, if and when nation states like the US and Russia decide to actually infiltrate digital spaces like this,
Mhm.
they can. Deepfake is just too real.
Yeah.
For now we might see through it, but like that's changing extremely rapidly and is not a long-term plan. We're just
Right.
digital's not the way to go. But we might use it to organize things in person, right? There's a thing from my Christian roots that comes to mind. You'll know it. You'll know someone's faith by their works, right? If someone online is encouraging you to do something good in the world, okay, that's a really good, probably good sign, as long as you have a good idea of what good means, right? As long as you have a strong anchor there. But
Right.
most of our organizing needs to focus on actual local communities, and most of the things that we trust in need to happen in person.
Absolutely.
We just need to be resilient against the digital threats we're facing. We've been under a digital AI, misinformation campaign, I believe, at least for the last 10 years. I mean, there's always been misinformation campaigns in all media throughout all of time, but the
Yeah.
actual social media being used against the US population,
Mhm.
I'm certain we know there was a lot of that, Facebook misinformation going on in
Yes.
2015. I mean, that's
Mhm.
not disputed by almost anyone. It's a question of who was
No.
paying for it, right?
Mm.
It doesn't matter. It's incredibly cheap now. They've had 10 years to get good at it, and they have absolutely gotten good
Mhm.
at it across all platforms. So,
Yeah.
to be resilient long term, we're just going to have to be organizing local and reaching out local and counting on that for our results more than we are the digital stuff. The balance
Absolutely.
has to be more in person. This room needs to be full for a meeting, not this room.
100%. 100%.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Because
Right.
this online stuff, the only point of this is to redirect people back to their communities. The entire identity of
Absolutely.
General Strike is to come online just to go back in person. Because now you're equipped with the tools and knowledge to go in person to talk with your community. Because when most people coming in from the outside to the General Strike wants action, wants to strike, wants to do stuff, we calmly tell them, just go shop at your small business, local groceries, actually talk to your
Mhm.
people, turn around and, talk. Don't be chronically online. The reason why I'm here
Right.
is to direct people not online, right? It's good to have information. It's good to have a tap to the people that you know that is not within arm's distance of you, but it's more so
Mhm.
important to have the tools and equip yourself with the knowledge to go in person to these things.
Mhm.
I make little leaflets and zines for that very purpose, so that people can actually
Mm.
hey, here you go, and then have that physical conversation, hand to hand act. So all
I
of
love
what I
that.
do is to just get people on here, just to turn them around back to their communities, because people want action. People want to do stuff. People who are fed up with the system just have all this rage and stuff, and we have this
Damn right.
tranquil, calming space here to have a level head, hand you some of
Mhm.
these, and then turn around and actually know the people's names in your community and your peoples, right?
Mhm.
That's the whole point we're here for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you have all these
100%. That is, yeah.
yeah. So we have all these resources and stuff, right? So we do all of this online, but that's just because it's accessible to most people, right? So I want to be able to help people in Arizona, I'm in California, right? Well, I'm not going to make that drive, every once in a while, but you have these online resources so that we can get that information to you onto your screen, so that you can turn around and tell the people who aren't as online
Mhm.
as they are, to then actually
Yeah.
build and band and create that community, or really rebuild it and such.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Cool.
I dropped the Matrix in the chat if you want to check it out. If you check additional resources, you'll see like PDFs for Zines, our GSUS pamphlet, and generic flyers you can distribute in your own community as well.
Where did you say that was? Oh, you said that was in the chat, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. I see it. Thank you.
And with owning the means of production as well, we don't make privy those designs. Every single one of these zines that you see right here in my hand, all of those designs are ready to be print on your printer, and instructions are included in that resources link. So if you want to have these
Okay.
as well, the only thing stopping you is a printer
Mm.
and then a stapler, maybe some scissors as
Oh,
well.
beautiful. I'm about to have a printer here in a little bit. My mom's, since she's leaving for Mexico with my stepdad and siblings, she's actually just asked me, because I told her I was actually going to be printing out flyers and stuff and pamphlets with another group. If anyone's in the Florida area, Southern Florida area, that needs papers printed, got you. Just got to get the word out, really, and be open to
loud,
conversation.
be open
Yeah,
to
be proud.
conversation, be loud, proud. Just if no one
Mhm.
hears you, no one's gonna know.
But then we also got to be willing to hear them, even no matter how crazy it sounds. We got to at least give them their piece, and then be like, okay, so let me show you. Maybe here's a different idea on how to look at it instead of, oh, you're so fucking dumb. Like, we got to come at it a different kind of way and be like, okay, here's a different perspective I can show you. You know, and that's really going to lead to a productive conversation that can really help unite those that are kind of in the middle, or kind of swaying or sitting on the edge.
If you have the time, just listening to
Right.
someone and truly listening is incredibly powerful.
Hmm.
I mean, guaranteed, if you listen long enough to anyone, there's a lot you're not going to agree with. But like, you don't have to convince. Like, people are emotional first. Humans are emotional first. Rational second. Whatever you can do to make that connection with another person and warm up to them and get them to warm up to you and find things that you value in them and affirm those things genuinely, um, and appreciate something about who they are and what they bring and make them feel that. A lot of people, that's exactly why they're spouting what they're spouting, because someone already did that for them. And if you do it for them, you might not have to do as much convincing as you think. They might you have a little more pause. There's a video on YouTube, and I've seen all of YouTube, and I know how stupid that is to say, but to make a point, I watch a lot of YouTube, and there's only a single YouTube video I've ever bookmarked in my bookmarks bar, and I've recommended it many times. And there's something, I'm going to put this in the chat here. It's about flat Earth, but this point is not about flat Earth, nor is it to dunk on flat Earthers. It's an interview with a flat Earther,
Okay.
an ex-flat Earther, and there's about halfway through the interview, he talks about like how he got sucked in and how he got pulled out, and it really, for me, painted a picture of what's going on in our country. The emotional journey he went on to get sucked into a community like that and become part of it and to stay part of it, and the emotional journey required to come back out of it. And he had a deep human need for connection, and he
Hmm.
found that in that community. And then it was only his family begging him to just step back for a few months that really brought him back out of it. As some of you may have noticed, you can talk till you're blue in the face with a flat earther or someone else who has some other idea stuck in their head, and you're getting
Right.
nowhere. And you are, in fact, all you're really doing is you're reinforcing how validated they feel in their position. They believe that being combative or rejection is validating, right? Um, Indifference is all that really hurts. So when his family begged him to just step back for a few months and disconnect, he cooled down, his head cleared, and he came to his senses and started thinking rationally. Because when he was constantly fighting and being fought and being attacked and being told, "Oh, you're dumb," he wasn't thinking rationally. He was thinking instinctively, right? You know, and he had to get into a peaceful place in his mind, a comfortable place to begin to be rational. So you really got to pick your fights, because if you're not fighting in good faith, uh, what you're doing is only going to escalate, right? And not towards a good end. So, yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
This isn't as much on the topic of striking, but it is political education, I think, how people work.
Absolutely.
And those with experience with it, I'm relatively new to activism. I've done none except for repost some things on Facebook, Bluesky, and before I quit Twitter. I was always raised to stay out of politics. Again, religious background. And I
Right.
wish I wish all of them had stuck with that teaching. Um,
Mhm.
but I don't know, I feel like I've learned a few things over the years about people since I've started paying attention to reality, and I'd hope those with more experience would absolutely correct me if I'm saying something that's just not on point.
No, you're on the right track. I mean, I can't sit here and say I'm an expert in any sense of the word at all, but I mean, I took a few psychology classes, and from what I can understand, a primal feeling that each human being has is the feeling for connection and bond with fellow humans. So when they have that antagonistic feeling towards a group of people, and then you're antagonistic towards them, saying you're wrong, you're so dumb. They're just like, see, look at you just validate pretty much the crap they're telling themselves. So what it is you really got to meet them where they are, and like you were saying earlier, kind of the guy, if you've got time, if you've got patience, and that that is a saint that can do that.
If when you're getting around to town, if you're gonna go door to door or canvas, people want to be heard. They want to know you care about their needs, that you know what their needs are. It might be good to just go do a poll and ask
Mhm.
people, what are your concerns? I'd like to write them down. And
Right.
one, it's really good to know that. It's not just a manipulative tactic, although I do absolutely think it's going to give you a foot in the door. It's a good practical step.
Mhm.
Is just going around getting a neighborhood poll. And if you want to do it on the regular and check in on people and see if there's anything you can do about it, next time you come back, like, hey, I found a thing that could help with that. Um, Political power comes from solving people's needs. The mafia knows that, the Yakuza know that.
Mhm.
And at its roots, every political organization needs to do that or they need to use violence to retain
Right.
power, right? Um, and if you can connect with your community and say, hey, I just want to hear what matters to you, a lot of people will appreciate that if it's
Yeah.
genuine.
Right.
If you're not coming across as false and a player.
I say get rid of the labels, get rid of the Democratic, Republican. Just
Please.
tell me what you feel, tell me what you care about, and if it aligns with what I care about and what I feel, cool. If
Yeah.
not, cool. I know what to do then.
And if what they really want is they really want these leftists to shut up on social media, write it down and thank
Mhm.
them for sharing that with you.
Mhm.
Just wanted to add to that. I like the fact that we brought up just getting out in the street, boots on the ground, talking to the community and whatnot. And that definitely goes into what we try to encourage, especially our chapters here to do.
Mhm.
Just these assessments, within the communities, and that's how we're able to better be of service. I like how you brought up, I believe, a survey, giving the community a survey, problems that they see, problems that they, where we can improve on, not we as a chapter, but, within our material conditions, people waiting on a bus stop, what can we improve, their time there, any food deserts, how can we work as a community to solve these problems? And surveys is a great tool in doing so and listening. And that's how groups better evaluate and rectify the problems, within our communities.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to is speaking with the people.
Yeah. We
I
know,
mean,
Just gonna be the people diplomacy
right.
one too. This
Right.
is just not gonna be solved just by, oh, the votes we
No.
cast are gonna magically, do
No.
their job.
Gonna
I
take
don't
work.
think you can trust almost anyone in power right now to do their
No.
job. There's a few names that I see that I find inspiring and they give me some modicum of comfort, but it's early days and I'm not seeing enough. It's going to have to be us really inspiring the people that are voted into power to do their jobs, at least kind of.
Or vote them out.
If we have the chance to vote them out again, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for those who are able, yeah.
I mean, if we are given the opportunity to vote ever again in our
Yes.
lives,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Even. Yeah. Right. I'm sitting here
I
thinking
mean,
about.
with any meaning, the Russians
Yes.
vote, but
Yes. Yeah. It's a real fear, though. I mean,
yeah,
it's not even
because
hyperbole at this point. It's just that is what it is.
Is it just kind of open discussion?
Yeah,
This
it's open
point.
discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now is, even though we all have this fear building inside us about it, being able to spread the hope that we can, especially with something like what we're working towards, like letting people know that there are people in their community that are working towards this, I think helps build kind of more morale towards it. There's a lot of like this like area of discussion where like, what are our rights and like what will we have and like what won't we have specifically. And I don't know, that's something I've just been trying to focus on a lot, and especially just like organize, like personally, I've been in that. The survey thing is really fascinating. I'm gonna start looking into doing like building one for my neighborhood itself. I think that'll be really good for that, probably.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
Leave lots of room for write-in responses.
Yeah.
How would like ideas wise for, because like I don't really have any, like I have kind of a coalition I'm building towards in my community right now. Like I'm trying to like figure out how exactly that functions and how that understands. Could I like, I don't know, how can I approach people just as like just a concerned neighbor type thing, rather than just like I'm under this like umbrella, like, or like what, like I don't know, any ideas?
You don't have to explain yourself. Just knock on the door and ask questions, and conducting a survey. And we'd like to bring this to the attention of the local leaders and the, at the very least, and trying to find if we can uh, identify any resources that might be helpful to each other. And we're concerned about the divide in our country and think it's important to reach out to our neighbors. You don't need excuses for any of that.
Wow.
That's just solid crap.
The
That's
more
just living.
conversational it is too, I'm sure would help.
Yeah.
I mean, the more friendly and just natural it feels when you're speaking to someone like, hey, these are some things that we care about. I just wanted to see how you guys are feeling about this and maybe some thoughts that you maybe had, and feel free to put whatever you need, and you get people's ideas right there, and then you can start working on, okay, well this, they think they need this, they need that. What can we do to compromise and come up with a plan to give it to them and say, oh, well, this isn't exactly what what our constituents are, or constituents, our representatives are supposed to be doing. I mean, we're pretty much picking up behind them, but
Yeah. I wish they were organizing this kind of stuff. Why aren't they organizing strikes? I mean, why aren't they reaching out to their constituents, asking us
right.
to mobilize? Why are they not spearheading stuff? Like, I don't like either of the political parties because they're both so weak. Like,
Mhm.
if the
I think a lot of
Democrats really were going to step up, like, why aren't they out here organizing? Bernie's organizing people, a
Bernie,
couple
the
others
only
organized,
one.
but so
Oh,
few. Sorry, go ahead,
yes.
Caden.
Well, a lot of them are detached from the general public in
It's their
like
fault.
everything. They're
They're
not
not
like,
even.
they don't care. They like on
Yeah,
some, like maybe at one point they did care. Like we can say that like maybe our politicians did have our backs at some, but like a lot of modern day politics is fed by this political theater that everyone is involved in. Like whether you
Yes.
are, sorry, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, etc. It's like no matter who you are, you're still like you're a part of the media's attention, what's it called, attention economy, and like trying to
Mhm.
make sure you're engaged in the views and like the mass like
Propaganda.
complacency.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Kind of sucks the
Toxic.
Cognitive
soul.
dissonance.
It sucks the soul of man when or woman when they get into politics too. It can be very draining. Eventually, you just lose sight of it. You lose touch with the public themselves.
you get tired of you probably get jaded and very, very cynical. It's hard to stay
Yeah.
idealistic and also involved in politics and realistic. Those
Well,
those are
that's most
odds
of
and
the
ends.
industries.
Mhm.
Like no matter where you go, like I'm trying to go into architecture, and like every form I read is a bunch of disheartened architecture students that are like, I wanted to make a difference in the world, but there's too many systems in play that don't allow for that innovation. Like,
It's all to keep you under their thumb. And I like to
I
say
think a
something.
lot of our. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it was a random thought. Democrats aren't even really leftists; they're just diet Republican.
I mean, if you want to compare U.S. left to any other country's left,
Right.
or any European country's left, yeah, they're not. The U.S. leftists are right of, the far right in almost anywhere in Europe, except for Germany. um,
That part.
yeah.
Oh Lord.
I've been thinking for a while that the House is just too small. The representatives represent too many people. I think that fundamentally that's part of the disconnect is that how can you connect with millions of people as a representative? It's kind of silly, or even hundreds of thousands. I don't know what the average number is. It's too many, I think the House should be like 10 times larger than it is now. That's
A lot of
I
our
don't
politics
know.
is sorry. A lot of our politics is based into these a lot of it starts with education. Like people have higher chances in education that are more like in the aristocratic sectors of like the Ivy League schools. Those are the politicians that we're getting. They're the people that are the rich kids that don't have any real connection to wealth disparity, the housing insecurities or anything like that. So they don't really know that these are the issues that are plaguing general public.
And that is very much their fault. They could be finding out. They could be paying attention or caring in town halls. They're pretending to care,
But
clearly.
what reason would they have to? If they're comfortable, they don't really like as much as it's like we
Right.
want to help the
That's
people.
we have to make them uncomfortable.
Mhm.
You'd think that patriotism and being a good person would be good enough. However, when
No.
you're rich enough, you don't have to worry about such things. Um, so that comes down to things like Citizens United, where uh, and what's the other one that allowed money in politics? Was that Citizens United? One of them was allowing corporations to be people. The other was allowing money to be.
That was Citizens
Speech.
United, but it was a problem even before.
Yeah, there was two that kind of tacked on each other that made the monster we've got now. But the fact is they're invested in the stock market. They're not invested in their constituents. They're beholden to stockholders before they're beholden to their constituents. Um, and theoretically, they're being voted in, but they can just buy votes effectively where we are with the media landscape. So, it's easier for them to grow their stock portfolio and buy the votes they need, and then just lie and pretend to care in town halls.
Who's
Stats.
taking
I
care
was
of our
hoping that
stockholders?
I was hoping that if we ever did long term at any point when we got the chance, make the house bigger, it would make it harder to game the system and give the representatives a chance to actually connect with their constituents by making them answer to a smaller community. When you go to a town hall and you don't recognize anyone in your town hall, that's just
Right.
weird, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a
Because it's
problem.
pulling from a place with hundreds of thousands of residents in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you were to get a town hall together in a lot of these rural areas, you're able to get more momentum, which, to be fair, the rural areas have. The Republicans have gotten a lot more momentum, a lot more cohesive. And a lot of ways they have voted the way their constituents wanted them to, after paying for the media to convince them that's what they wanted. Because they're representing smaller communities in a lot of cases.
Mhm.
Marginally smaller, but smaller. Another thing that's hurting Democrats, or at least let's just say the left side of the spectrum, because I don't actually like either of the parties. I think two-party system has been, hampering us quite a bit. But I think leftists tend to be more comfortable arguing at this while sacrificing momentum, and being more idealistic and less realistic. And there's a lot of squabbling that happens that honestly is tiring to themselves and definitely tiring to anyone who's listening. Um, and so the welcome packet, I had started browsing it, and on the list of goals, our demands, I'm getting flashbacks of the what was the sit-in that everyone in DC where nothing happened around 2008? What was that one called?
Nothing happened. Hold on.
In 2008, after the housing crisis or something, everyone went to DC and could never get their act together. What was the big
Were they set over by the Lincoln Memorial? Or
whatever
something?
strikes and political movements that are not extremely clear and have very solvable and concise goals suffer from just confused branding, and it's not very actionable. Yeah, we want to change everything and fix the world, but like today in this particular movement, whatever event, whatever message we're putting out there to the public, it's got to be punchy, clear, and broadly appealing. Like, wait, why would I be upset with that? Do I
Right.
want Donald Trump in particular to go to jail? Oh, yeah. But do I think that's a message that people want to hear and are going to respond to? Not in the
Absolutely
slightest.
not.
Is that
No.
going to get us something today? No. Do I actually care if Donald Trump specifically rots in a cell? I mean, if I got a genie in front of me, yes, I do. But like, I have way more important, bigger fish to fry. I can empathize with the people right now who are sitting back and watching the government get torn to pieces because they believe it's actually in service of a greater good. If I truly believed that whoever was the president, because I can't say Donald Trump would ever convince me of this, what I'm about to say, but if I believed whoever was in power and all the three branches of government were on my side on a particular issue,
Excuse me.
I would be more hesitant to throw so any friction get in their way. I'd be like, yeah, that's not constitutional. If I'm being honest, yeah, that's probably illegal, and ooh, that's disruptive. But if I can frame that as ripping a Band-Aid off and just saying this is going to happen and it's what we need and it's going to be a short-term loss but a long-term gain, for me, climate change, if I truly believed all of them were coordinated on doing absolutely everything that was necessary to get climate change under control, I would hesitate to cause problems. I'd be like, well, democracy is something I really believe in, and I don't believe the way they're doing it is in line with democracy, but like the planet doesn't care about democracy, and we kind of need the planet. I would be more torn. That's what I'm saying. And a lot of people have those kinds of issues. So when we pick our punchy, like this is the thing we need and we need it now, it can't be the thing we need and want. It has to be the
Right.
thing that the people we're trying to convince that we think are convincible need and want, and have them see themselves and their desires and goals in
Yes.
our voice. That's so if you want to pick some things from our demands, find the ones that are the US people's demands. What is the US people's mandate? Lots of people support gun control. And are we gonna bring MAGA and convince MAGA to get behind a gun control movement? No, probably not,
No.
right? But a lot of people would be like, yeah, I can get behind what they're arguing about if we were really clear on that particular point and doing something very, very actionable and discreet. So whatever we think is the right step, we got to make sure it's an appealing step.
Well, I've been looking into like how to open the dialogue more specifically about like all these greater like subjects, because you can like centralize on like the what we're building right now. I feel like is like these concise ideas, like what they will look like and what they will come to fruition to be, but opening the dialogue of reframing how things are. Like if we reframe something like we're trying to get Elon out as like we're trying to make sure that the rich billionaire doesn't try and colonize Mars to make a second Earth when the Earth we have isn't working.
Yeah, let's just go ruin Mars, like when we already haven't learned from our lessons. Good idea. Yeah, and ruin this one to get there. I mean, it would take hundreds, thousands of years in the most ideal scenarios to terraform Mars and make it anywhere close to Earth. And if we all worked together, well, history tells me that's not going to happen. Also, I don't have thousands of years to wait. I don't care about colonizing Mars. I care about keeping the planet
Yes.
that's already currently way better than Mars can ever be. Mars can be tolerable in some far future sci-fi conceivable way. Sure. That's not relevant right now. And the entire time we're terraforming Mars, we kind of need this planet, and we kind of need
We're at our
ourselves to
tipping
be
point,
functioning well together. So that, yeah,
or at least with a few
yeah.
things, we're at our tipping point. Or yeah.
Well, for me, I would be trying to do something. I mean, I don't know. I can't say. I don't know exactly what I would be putting on, the frontline messaging for the 1, 2, or maybe 3 bullet points. And I think 3 is actually stretching it. I think if there's 1 or 2 things per public movement and per public protest, um, any sustained endeavor, it's got to be really clear about that one thing is, and we got to be consistent. We can't. Every time someone wants to turn it into something else, we have to say, "Hey, put it on the list. Get behind this. I'm sorry, but we got priorities." And that's just, if we do
Right.
this, then we can have the conversation about that thing. But what what's the thing we need to do now to get back on the right track? Um, right now, while we're still in a society driven by money and not an authoritarian regime, currently there is the lever of greed and people prognosticating, right? So if we were to insist on a change that would change their profit motives, we could bend the will of people currently in power while they're in power. Um, if we can get a movement on that quickly. And if there's any movement towards that, that can shift, the game theory for everyone involved, right? Right now,
Yes.
Trump and anyone else who's trying to, direct his movements are counting on greed and weak-willed politicians, shallow, corrupt politicians, to bend to their will with the current economic forces that they're threatening them with. But that's only going to be needed and an effective lever for so long if we're on the worst case path here. So a strike,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Strikes and boycotts can absolutely still push those levers when we have enough leverage. But whatever the public messaging is, we got to be aware of like how long that's going to be effective and get movement on it quickly.
I will say, thinking about that as you've been speaking about that, one thing I have noticed that throughout most of the country, a lot of people seem to agree on is that Elon was not elected. So there is that. And then, as well as birthright, the birthright citizenship, the immigration, the fact that he is himself an immigrant that is here ruling the nation, shadow, as a shadow figure, pretty
How,
much.
how much of the government, so how much of the people didn't even vote? I don't think that's appealing to the people who didn't even vote. They don't care that he wasn't
Right.
elected. They didn't vote, right? They
Because
didn't
they
vote
probably,
for.
yeah.
They're just not involved. They're like, whatever. We hate all of you. This is all tiring. What the people who didn't vote are tired of is being worked to death and being stolen and not getting raises. Um,
So there
they're
needs to be that
working.
incentive also to vote. Because, I mean, if you feel like you don't have a
I
voice,
don't.
if you don't feel like you have a say, then, you know, can't
Right.
blame some
Yeah.
of them, but at the same time, I can't.
I
Like,
I think it would be good to see if we can swing political will to say like to make it look like, hey, people currently in power would not be voted back in. I think there's a lot of people currently in power that
mhm.
currently their power matters that would be worried about reelection, and that may still be available to us for the short term. I could see that rapidly disappearing the more they believe and are willing to believe in an authoritarian regime. Just because their power is currently being leveraged by the current political system, or the one we thought existed. Um,
Right.
that doesn't. Maybe they believe their power in the future comes from loyalty and ass kissing, which is real and
Yeah.
apparently quite a valuable currency
Mhm.
for the fools who are willing to believe that they're not going to be just stabbed in the back as soon as it's convenient. But if they weren't fools, they wouldn't be doing what they were doing. Um,
Unfortunately, some of those with power are bending the knee because, I mean, unfortunately, this orange guy
they're
does have some
cowards,
power.
they're greedy, They respect that kind of authoritarian strongmanness because they're just scared of reality and emotionally immature. Yeah, and yeah,
Did you guys hear how Elon was I'm sure we all, but if you haven't, he was supporting the neo-Nazi group in Germany as well as UK as well as MAGA here.
I heard that. I would like to talk to someone in Germany before I lean heavily on it.
Yes.
The misinformation is, you can still do research if you dig on a
Yeah.
thing and get it from enough different reputable sources to
Right.
to
Yes.
be able to come to a conclusion on things. Facts can still be known, but you really
Mhm.
do have to dig if you're going to lean heavily on them.
You
It
got
would be
yeah.
important in our network to be reaching out to reputable people in the international community and get them looped in so we can ask them at least live to corroborate things from their local sources, like their own libraries and servers and archives, and to be able to compare them to what we're seeing. Because our digital landscape, the more the corporations bend the knee, which they're doing because they bought this regime,
Mhm.
the more everything we're doing can and will be subtly filtered and rewritten on the fly by AI. If I assume everyone here has memorized 1984, main character was rewriting history manually. That is
Yeah.
absolutely easy to do on an individualized level, at scale, and it's only getting cheaper and cheaper and easier. Thanks,
Yeah.
DeepSeek. But
Yeah.
you know,
And we're a little over
long
halfway
term,
there.
yeah, we need to be able to, if there's a certain fact we're leaning on, or some strategy
Right.
or some justification or some rationale, it's good to have people that are known outside of your bubble and our bubble,
Yes.
that have access to different systems, uh,
Mhm.
and
Right.
build that network of trust, while
Yeah,
we
because
still can.
right, because I mean, we've really got to know all of our stuff. Because all I really know is that JD Vance had gone over to Germany and really scared the shit out of them. But I mean, I do have some people over in Canada and in France, but I don't know if that helps any. But maybe
I
Canada
mean,
and
give us a
France. I
friend who
mean,
used to know.
they might know some
I,
money.
I I work with Ukrainians. They do QA on our
Right.
software, and we have to change our schedules so that they get up early in the morning and I stay up late at night to do software deployments and stuff. If there was something I was hearing in the media where I'm just like, I don't know what to like, let's say that I just tuned into politics and I just heard the president say, uh, Russia started the war. I could message them, risk my professional relationship, but like ask them about something they probably care about and just be like, hey, you're there. What is your perspective on this? Right?
Hmm.
That can be extraordinarily helpful and meaningful, to have
Yeah.
those contacts and start to notice when contacts go silent.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
I actually I have
yeah.
the very first guy I ever had a crush on in like third grade. His name's Pavel. He very much made it very he made me aware. I was like, "Oh, you sound like you're from Russia." I'm not from Russia. I'm Ukrainian. I'm like, "Oh, excuse me." Like very proud and
That's a very
fucking
important
adore him.
distinction, to be fair.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was like 2002 and this little man knew.
Yeah.
We were in
Oh yeah.
second like
I
this
mean,
ooh.
like 9 years before, was it 9 years before they had just given up their nukes because,
Mhm.
with a promise that Russia and US and UK would never invade?
Right?
That's very fresh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
it
he had
it
just
it
moved back
it
over
could
here
be
too. Oh,
the
yes.
kind of thing where, we invite people from those other countries to come into a meeting and give an update on their perspective. Invite people from the international community to these kinds of things because they also need to see that people in the US are fighting. Because the amount of leverage other countries and on their social networks can pressure our government is huge. And if they really do see there are people here fighting and they can help coordinate with that, that's it. It can give both of us hope and a reason to fight.
a a big
100%.
thing I've been exploring, like thought wise, because like a lot of people are like really into this like center, like they're kind of centering in on like what can we do for the United States right now, but like what does that mean for the general conflicts that are currently happening. I'm trying to pay attention to as much as I can, but keeping track of almost 200 something countries is very hard.
Just knowing the
Yeah.
facts, really, just knowing the fact. You don't have to know everything about it, but just, knowing that,
Yeah, I
knowing
think
that
what I'm
Russia
trying to
is the one
do.
who went up against Ukraine, and like knowing the important things is probably the best thing, and being able to spread that word too, so that way people don't misconstrue things that are being propagated at the moment.
I think
And this is
what we will see, and like it's kind of inevitable, is that there will be a large shift in culture towards a lot of this stuff just by like the amount of noise that like this group is making, by the amount of noise everyone's making. Something
yeah.
we can hope, but I it feels something in my gut.
We're
I
gonna
don't
have
know
to
what
take
else.
it back. Shit,
When it comes
big
back to
goes down.
branding, a couple things come to mind. There's no recognizable symbol of the movement. I mean, anti-movement, sure, MAGA hats, brilliant marketing, simple, affordable, common. Hopefully, no armbands in the near future. But we might consider actually, finding some. I guess you've got a logo on your head there, and maybe if you want to make that the symbol of the resistance, but getting people out there wearing it and tapping people in this community to say, hey, start buying merch, literally, seriously.
Is is that something you made,
Yeah, so the
Jaden?
entire headband I made from fabric from a fabric store. So not only I sewed the headband on, I embroidered this as
Oh,
well by a machine, but both the design embroidered in house and this, I was thinking about making them for us as well. But this is just a test trial.
I would love
I
to. I'd absolutely buy one in a
I
heartbeat.
would encourage us to get something that's a little more red, white, and blue punchy. I mean, you go with the same
Oh,
design, inspired by it, but I do think color matters. There's a lot of comments on Reddit. People are seeing photos of protests and they're seeing Mexican flags and Palestinian
mhm.
flags and Canadian flags, and there's no American flags. And I mean, it's weak
Well,
branding. The Democrats have not taught us to have good branding, and
Stunning, yeah.
this
Well,
is
because a lot of people
absolutely a
aren't proud
branding
of
initiative.
America. Yeah,
there's
a lot of people aren't proud of America, and we need to make them proud.
the big thing I've seen, and not like one of the Yosemite National Park, they put the American flag in a sign of distress, specifically.
I saw that
So like
upside down.
something that'll be
Mm,
very
yes.
using tactics like that, specifically like using the narrative that we currently have to like kind of like guide our like statements a little bit and like get a cohesion on what everything is and all that kind of stuff. But I think that also will come with each state chapter too, because each state has its own like representation and what it means and all that kind of stuff. So creating a cohesion within that, but also like recognizing how big this is going to get.
I will give you one other word of caution of something I've learned about the opposition, our neighbors, the real root of the problem and why we're in the situation we're in, well, other than the people who bought their hearts. A lot of MAGA, they're not just convinced, they're not just feeling included, they're literally, and I don't think they're aware of this dynamic or emotionally aware to understand what it is. A lot of them are literally in love with Donald Trump. They're not in love with JD Vance. They're in love with Donald Trump. I had the chance to sit down with the father-in-law of one of my buddies back in 2021, I think 2020, something like that. And he's a contractor, and he's about as MAGA and shallow as they get. I do not like him as a person. He's the kind of contractor that gives general contractors a bad name. Um, Anywho, but I sat down with him on my buddy's porch, and we knocked back 8 glasses of VO over the course of several hours, way into the wee hours of the morning. And we ended the conversation with a hug. And I was very clear, that we disagreed. We had different perspectives, but we should be able to talk. And we had a heart to heart. And he came to realize, I was asking, like, what are you seeing, man? What is it? Why do you like him so much? And he didn't know. And eventually I was like, man, the way you're talking, it sounds like you're in love. And he's like, actually, I think I am. I think I am in love. I think you're right. Those are the right words. And I was like,
Well,
oh, this
at least
colors
he
and
could
shapes
admit
my understanding of what we're up against. Because
Yeah.
a lot of what they're doing is not just patriotism, it's not just feeling included.
Blind.
And he's connected at a deep level with a lot of our neighbors, and he is the abusive boyfriend. If you've ever had a friend or someone you care about that is in love with an abusive boyfriend,
Okay, let's turn this on. Oh my god. Not up. Okay, well, we're just gonna get the last of me and my voice only. Or maybe I could do this real quick. Okay, I guess not. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being here. This is my voice. You can't see my face, so I'm not sure what's wigging out now. But thank you so much for joining us. We are here every other so often. Wednesdays, same time, different agenda, good vibes, hanging out, discussions, critiquing. Maybe not the entire critique of capitalism. Maybe, just I got a little bit of some reform in there, but that's kind of why we do these discussions. So thank you so much for joining us. Love you all. Notice the Midwestern marks in there. I like to keep my enemies close, right? Friends close, enemies closer. Always gonna see what's going on there. Haven't been there in a while. I don't want to, taint my brain too much, but thank you so much for joining us. Love having you here, and please be safe, take care, and all that good stuff.